Let's get to some news overseas now. Rescue crews continue to dig through the rubble and debris in search of survivors in Morocco after a devastating earthquake that has killed more than 2,000 people. Soldiers and aid workers have been transporting supplies into the mountain villages, many of which have been left in ruins. Nerves were rattled again today after a 3.9 magnitude aftershock hit the region. There's no word on if it caused additional damage or casualties. The initial 6.8 magnitude quake hit late Friday night and was centered in the Atlas Mountains. More than 2,000 people are injured, with officials reporting some 1,400 people are in critical condition. The United Nations says it is coordinating with Moroccan authorities on how the international community can help provide support.
At this stage, we'll need to see whether there is a greater need for reconstruction, including in the historic district. As you know, there's a heritage site in Marrakesh, and we'll have to see whether that needs to be protected further. But long-term reconstruction issues will have to wait. First, we need to make sure that people get the humanitarian aid that they need.
New security camera images have been released showing the moment the earthquake hit. People can be seen casually walking through a street in Marrakesh when the shaking suddenly starts. The scene turns chaotic as people begin to run out of the buildings just as debris begins to crumble down around them. Some harrowing video there. And for a closer look at this earthquake, we're joined by Russell Pisklevitz. He's a professor of geophysics at the University of Toronto. Professor, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Reuters.
As a scientist, as you're watching now the videos of the damage of the debris, maybe you even saw the video surveillance camera footage we just played of the moment the earthquake shook, what goes through your mind?
Well, it's kind of crazy. Our active Earth is at it again here. I mean, it's only a few months ago in Turkey that 50,000 people died in one of these events. So, you know, Beatrice, it's the holy grail is trying to predict stuff like this, and it's just not possible. I mean, it's the real challenge of what we do in geophysics, and it's just natural that these events are going to keep occurring, but tragic for sure.
When you call about, the lack of being able to predict being the holy grail, I guess, how does something like this happen? And is there something, well, I guess, with regionality, for example, with the Atlas Mountains that would have caused it to hit hardest there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, Beatrice, we know exactly where these events are going to occur. We just don't know when they're going to occur. So Morocco sits right at the plate boundary. It's where Africa is moving north and colliding with Europe. It's really an unstoppable Africa colliding with a unmovable Europe. And so that damage we see of those two massive earth plates meeting is the damage you're seeing on the video there. It's just the shaking, the rupture, and all of that stuff. So yeah, we know these things are going to occur, but just precisely when, we can't pin down. Really what we have to do is build for these events. I mean, the poor people there just need structures that can withstand earthquakes of those magnitudes.
And now I guess these structures are struggling to deal with the aftershocks as well. The initial one right after the quake, about 11 minutes or so afterwards, and then another aftershock today, 3.9. What are you watching for now, Professor?
Well, hopefully, normally the aftershocks are lower magnitude like that. So it's a matter of keeping rescuers safe and trying to uncover what they can there and rescue people. So, I mean, with any luck, and again, it's hard to predict this stuff, hopefully the worst of the seismic motion is finished and they can get on with rescue efforts.
When you talk about being able to predict where it's going to happen, do scientists like yourself, Professor, are they able to predict, I guess, frequency with which these kinds of things happen as well? Because as you mentioned, this area is known to have earthquakes, so it's been about 120 years since we've seen one as deadly as this in Morocco specifically.
Yeah, the answer is very complex to your question, actually. So we can try to predict the rough frequency of these things, and maybe it occurs every 100 years, an earthquake of that magnitude. But what we don't know is when it's going to occur specifically in that period. So to give you an example, it could be a 7 magnitude earthquake again in 5 years, or maybe 150 years. We know that would happen in that area. It's just a matter of knowing exactly when it is. And obviously you can't evacuate an entire city. Now, the non-sexy answer for all of this is we really do have to just build to modern code and construction. Unfortunately, mortar buildings like that are prone to collapse. Even the CN Tower here in Toronto is meant to withstand a magnitude 8.5 earthquake. So we could get huge ground motion, and as humans, we can engineer buildings that withstand that. But it's a matter of kind of getting that building standard and that economy out to general populations.
Certainly in a city like Toronto, we've got a lot of modern buildings, not the same over in the Middle East, in Morocco, where these buildings and structures are thousands of years old. Many of them are heritage sites. So what has to happen in these kinds of structures then, Professor, to make sure they are safe moving forward? And how do we protect these heritage sites in the future that are important pieces of history?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's a balance between those. You can retrofit it. So I work a lot in Turkey, which is another major seismic zone, and so there's a lot of work that goes on there. Now, without getting nuts and bolts of it, you reinforce with steel and other things these masonry structures, but ultimately it costs money. So imagine, again, trying to get that resource out to all of these people, all of these populations is a real challenge. But this is what we face. I mean, we know that science. It's a matter of putting the engineering into practice.
Professor Russell Pisklevitz, you've taught me a lot in our few short minutes together. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Beatrice.